I'm Kevin Davis. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm very happy to be joined by a very good friend of the show and someone we haven't had on for a while. I've missed Father Stephen McKenna. It's been a bit of a time. Summer is it's something I've kind of realized here in the last few weeks that transition of summertime into school time is pretty tough, and people have had pretty busy weeks. So Father has been kind enough to join us to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I think near and dear to many out there. And it's something that's going to be very important soon because, well, football season is upon us. Actually, I think today was the first college football game. Florida State versus somebody. I forget who. I don't know if anybody cares, but we're probably going to talk about kind of maybe the morality of sports in a way, and what is the proper way to play sports, what is the proper way to view sports, and kind of what does sports mean to society as a whole. And it's actually it's a very important topic because many people love sports and some people even worship sports. I am a big sports fan, so I'm a little nervous about the show. I'm not going to lie, so I'm hoping Father doesn't make me cry by the end of the show, but we will see. Father, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on, and please, and I know I have to say too, Father, he's a great person to have on because first of all, he's Father McKenna, but Father was a big time athlete. Father played baseball to a very high level, and I think football too, to a not quite as high, but well. So Father knows sports well and is the perfect person to talk about this topic. So Father, take it away.
Yeah, sports was definitely near and dear to my heart, as you just pointed out, that it was something I played ever since I could play. I played baseball ever since I could walk. So I was one, and my dad had gotten me a little Nerf bat and a Nerf ball, and then a ball, like a little Velcro glove and a Velcro ball. And he would sit in the basement and watch TV, and I would stand there for hours while he's watching TV, throw the ball, and I'd hit it, and I'd go get it, and then run back, or I'd stick my glove out to the side, and he'd throw it into the glove, and then I'd pull it out and throw it back. And so before I can even remember doing things, that was what I was doing. And my dad was a very good athlete too. He played amateur softball back in the 80s, when men's softball was enormous, and traveled throughout the country, and even won men's national championship, I think, as an amateur softball player. So he sort of passed that love of sports down onto me. We were just a very sporty family, and for anybody who's wondering, the thumbnail picture, it is me. So a much younger, a long time ago me. So that's just as a way of kind of putting that out there. But
Playing
yeah,
first
so
base, right, Father? Look, I think you shared
correct.
that with me a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. I was like, it looks like a first baseman's glove.
Yep. Yeah, I played first base. I actually originally played third base when I was coming up to high school. And then I was, I was one of those hit puberty early kids, and so I was, pretty much 6 feet tall when I entered into high school, and they were just like, "Well, we really could use you over here." And so,
You're big. You can
yeah,
you can reach a lot. Yeah.
exactly. So that was, and I didn't care as long as I was playing, and I was in the lineup and everything like that. Then I would play. And then I grew to love playing first base. That was a lot of fun, that position. And I played a lot of baseball with a lot of really talented people. So it was good.
And so Father, I guess the question now, I think where you kind of want to start is with what's appropriate for playing sports, and I think that there are plenty of parents watching the show, and so the question is, okay, my children want to play baseball, soccer, gymnastics, I suppose. I mean, and I guess there's a lot of ways you can go here. So let's start with boys, because I think you said before we started this, you got to separate the boys and the girls, and I think that makes sense. So if you would, Father, let's start with the boys and tell me kind of what's your perspective on that, and then we'll go with the girls maybe.
Well, I think actually, the division of sexes is probably a smaller point. So what I'd actually want to talk about is just a little bit of generality of
Sure,
principles for
please.
sports. So because I think it's necessary to set up that to understand that sports themselves, there's nothing wrong with athletics. In fact, in many ways, they are good. That uh, it is important for us, as we have the body as the temple of the Holy Ghost, that we're active, that we have exercise, that we have means of of keeping ourselves healthy. It's also, it's good for us to be able to get outside, to have things to be active in that way: fresh air, sunshine, physical activity, and it's also good for the mind and even for the soul, because it is legitimate recreation. Even the strictest of monasteries have times of recreation for them, and it's important to understand that the bow always bent, is not effective in comparison to the bow that is sometimes let off to relax before it's drawn back again. And so we want to we want to have times where we can take that breath, let the pressure off a little bit, and then, just as the word suggests, recreate ourselves so that we come back more ready to perform our duties of our state and into a better ability, because we have eased off for a little while, and then we come back refreshed and ready to go in that way. And so it's important that we understand those aspects, and sports really is a good way to fulfill that. And there are even some character aspects that are beneficial too. That through athletics you can promote certain aspects of perseverance and certain aspects of integrity and honesty, and ability to not only know but follow rules, that mutually agreed upon rules and regulations for things, and all of that. So playing sports is in and of itself just fine. We do it with our boys' camp all the time, and every week we have on Monday the what we call the Knights of the Sacred Heart, where Father Simpson and Brueggemann usually, or whichever one's around or whatever, get together with a number of any of the boys from the parish that want to go. They go down to the park and they play various sports down the park and all together and everything each week, as just a church recreation aspect of it for the young boys and some of the dads that want to join them each week. So that's great. Where we begin to depart from that is, as Pius XII talked about in his address on athletics, is that he is when the end of serving men towards greater perfection, when the end of keeping everything in that in its right place is no longer, it begins to be sacrificed, when that becomes when we lose the end, or it diverts from the end of serving God and bringing man closer to God, then it must be rejected. And so that's where we start getting into more of the aspect of organized sports as a general whole, and the troubles and dangers that can come from that. So it's important to understand that sports being organized together isn't bad itself. It's what society has taken on with it now. I grew up playing my entire life, and you were, from a very young age, we were expected to be at all of the practices. We were expected to be at all of the games, and if we weren't, then we were at risk for just not being able to be either on the team or able to play and have ourselves replaced in a spot. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a little kid. And it's a disordered view of sports. Sports are meant to be fun for everybody that is participating in them. It's supposed to be exercise for everybody. It's something that's supposed to be, it's supposed to be recreational. It's not supposed to be so serious that it is something that I'm out to get you and you're out to try to take down me in order to gain a spot on a team, or that a kid can't go to has to skip out on his grandmother's birthday party because he needs to show up to practice or he has a game. Or for us, that there's a lot of games that are played on the weekends and you can't show up to mass because of that and things like that. Well, obviously now we begin to peel back really where the beginnings of real problems come in, and this is just at those early ages of organized sports that it now has become one of the highest priorities that's made there, because the coaches portray it in that way. The team provides a pressure as well because they've all bought in. There's that pressure that is added on there, and it's very much a temptation for your child to start prioritizing that in that aspect. And like I said, this is just youth. This is just playing youth ball. Look at those. I mean, right now, I think it's still going on. I think the Little League World Series is going on.
I think I saw that. Yeah, I saw something in the news about Mexico playing. So I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about those kids. So I every year I played baseball in those town leagues. I was always in those travel teams for the summer, for like the all-star team to play. That's how those kids make it to the Little League World Series. It's a giant. They take the best players from their town, and then they place them on a team, and they play all these other towns, and that net gets wider and wider for distance traveled. The further along you are successful in these tournaments, until you ultimately get to the pinnacle of it at the Little League World Series. But most of those kids are spending half of their summers traveling around playing baseball. And they're 12.
Dangerous.
Yeah, they're 12, and as a 12-year-old, I had coaches swearing at me and yelling at us and things like that. This is the type of pressure that's put on a young kid. So when you're thinking, well, my kid's just a youngster, like we'll worry about the other stuff down the line. No, that external pressure starts then and there towards this disordered view of sports. It should be something. It should be a game. It should be something you're able to come and go to, and to play and to have fun with. And it should be something that doesn't add stress to you, but rather relieves stress and provides fun and entertainment, and exercise. And so that's where we start to go into that world of it being dangerous as a whole. In addition to that is, you could also say maybe at a real young age it's not that critical, but it quickly changes. And a lot, probably think back to when, for parents listening, if you're a convert, you'll understand what I'm saying. If you're a traditional Catholic that's always been a traditional Catholic, it might mean a little bit more explanation. But think about it this way: that kids start talking about things and pressuring kids into doing certain things earlier than parents think that they do. Especially worldling kids. Those kids know more than their parents think that they know, and they certainly know a lot more of stuff than traditional Catholic parents would want their own children ever being exposed to. And that's what they're going to start talking about, and that's the type of language that they're going to start using, and the movies that they watch are going to be that, the music that they listen to are going to be those things, the things that they find on the internet, the video games that they're playing, all those things that you have worked so hard to shelter your kids from, you put them in organized sports, and you've just opened the floodgates for them to be exposed to them all at once from a bunch of people that they're trying to impress and trying to make friends with because they're on a team together.
And I have to say, Father, I was homeschooled up until 15 when I went to Omaha in my freshman year. So I went to Omaha my sophomore year. My freshman year, I played baseball, high school baseball with my brother. Wasn't that good. Fast, played good defense, couldn't hit. But it was pretty shocking to go from being homeschooled. I had all Catholic friends my entire life. Then I went to play for this baseball team, and we didn't even have phones. This was before phones. This is 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was without technology, really. I mean, you had dial-up computers, and there really was still that atmosphere of wow. I remember being really not even shocked because a lot of it honestly went over my head in a good way. I was really still pretty innocent. It was kind of like, okay, I don't even know what they're talking about type of a thing. But it was still, I still can remember some of it, even to this day. It's kind of like, yeah, it's rough. It really is. And that was when I was 14. So at 14 years old, it was like, boom, here you go. And it was shocking stuff. It was jumping into the deep end.
Yeah. And then the thing about it too is that, along with it is that, 14 is sort of like, okay, the beginning aspects of it, but the way kids change at that age, going from 14 to say 16, the difference in that is immense. I mean, it's, they go from things that they've heard from another friend to all of a sudden things that they're doing and they're experiencing on their own, and then some, just in those couple of years, and so that's, it really becomes a real danger to faith, and that I really find the difficulty anybody justifying putting their kids into that situation. I don't know how you could, honestly. Again, that's different than if you have a bunch of kids playing that over at your house, and you're playing pick up soccer in the front yard. Then all right, fine. That's nobody's saying that's bad at all. But it's what you're exposing them to in that regard. There's other dangers that go along with it too. A danger as well is that of the ever corrupting development of pride that comes from athletic accomplishments because of praise that comes along with it. I can give an example that just happened a couple of weeks ago. People be really shocked. I think I was shocked to hear that, to experience this, but it just goes to show where the mind of the world around us is, and it was a real kind of eye opener. I went back a few weeks ago to Massachusetts for my grandmother's funeral, and I was outside the church and greeting people. Oh no, I was at the reception afterwards, and I haven't lived back there in so many years and everything like that. So there's a bunch of people that would come up to me and like, oh, I remember you when you were a boy, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, this one man that was there at the reception, my uncle pulled me aside and said, oh, let me introduce you to my good friend here, John Smith or whatever his name was. I don't remember. He's a good friend of mine, and I work with him or whatever it was. This is my nephew, Stephen. He's Donna's son, her oldest. And he looks at me. I've never met this man in my entire life. I'm now almost 40 years old, right? He looks at me and goes, oh, are you the Stephen McKenna that played baseball and had his name in the paper? And, and he started talking about different articles that were in the papers 20-something years ago.
Wow.
About me.
Huh.
And I was honestly really weirded out by it. It was really creepy.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what kind of world are we living in that some random stranger knows me 20 something years later for something I did as an 18-year-old? Like,
Right.
it was creepy. It was just really creepy. But that's there all the time. I mean, when I was in school, I worked at a deli in town, and I'd have these old men come in to get sandwiches and coffee, and they'd be talking about what I did in the games and things like that. It, it's a real thing.
Mm.
And when you
Wow.
get into to athletics in these in when you're still in school, um, our Thanksgiving Day game for football, we got a it's like we played the big rivalry on that day. We got a police escort from our field to the away field that we were playing at, and we played in front of over 10,000 people
Hmm.
because it's the rival game, and people are coming all the time, and people are interviewing you and all this stuff. I mean, it's this is just high school stuff, and it's the way those things go. And so like it's not so like the idea that you can escape that without that affecting you, if you're, I mean, you'd have to be halfway decent to be in that position, but if you are, I mean, then you'd really be tempting to be proud, as a temptation against that. Also, it's really tempting, um, that idea. Bishop Dolan always talked about it. It comes from, it's like the history of sports and everything really traces itself back to the Greeks, and the Greeks had it as this agonia, which is a struggle unto to death, type of thing. And not that we play to death, but so many of our sports, again, if it's meant to be recreation, if it's meant to be entertainment, that it's meant to be lighthearted, and it's meant to be of good sportsmanship and mutual respect and everything like that. But when you start getting into organized sports, it becomes very contentious and very much the struggle and and the strife, and you become and so when we talk about passions being easily raised up, rage is another one that is very, very easily raised up in the participation in the modern world of sports, because it's all you know um, uh, you know there's the old saying, winning, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, as long as you had fun, right? Well, that, like, going through, it was that for you got, if you get up to like a level where you're in, a little bit higher, like in high school or something like that, that becomes the only thing that matters is winning or losing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've been in fights in athletic events. I've, been received and given cheap shots and, different things. Like, you're in the middle of a pile in a football game. Well, guess what? It's real easy to just punch a guy while he's underneath you and nobody's going to see it, or stomp on a finger or do something like that. And it's all just part of what you just do, it's not like I'm happy to say it, but it's like, I've hit guys and I've been hit by guys in baseball on purpose. You know, that's that's not something that is in line with Catholic behavior. And so, and it was just sort of accepted when would get drilled to be like, oh well, that's there's something that precipitated that, and it's fair enough, and but or if it wasn't merited, then words were exchanged and not nice ones, and all of these things. And so it's an important understanding that sports, when embraced in this modern way, and the organized sports of today, really plays to participating in the firing up of passions, as a general rule. Um, then I think the one last point um, is the idea of, well, no, I think that's a good place to transition probably into the aspect of um, Oh no, one. Sorry, my bad. One last point is that again, when we circle back to the things that Pius, the idea that Pius XII talked about, that when the ends of the sport for the health of your body, and most importantly the drawing of man closer to God, when those things are no longer attained by it, then it's no longer, and then it should be rejected, as he says. Well, that's another aspect to it. And um, it's not so much, some sports are worse than others. So we talk about, kind of point out the danger to the soul, but there's also the danger to the body.
Mm.
It's like, I was fairly lucky with baseball. There's a couple times I've had some injuries from baseball, but they ended up not being as severe as they could have been. Um, you know, um, but with football, I mean, my injuries were legion when it came to that, and I was one of the lucky ones.
Mm.
I had multiple concussions. I have crooked fingers that probably broke somewhere along the way. I have a finger that dislocates and pops back in without any problem, nor me doing anything with it. I had dislocated my shoulder once. I had many, just real, you know, we'll discount all of just the general contusions as a whole. But I also had torn all the ligaments in my ankle and had to have surgery to repair it, and all of that. And I've seen far worse happen to a lot of other kids. So I always consider myself one of the lucky ones. But that was just some average. I was just an average high school football player. Like, it wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything extraordinary. My injuries weren't anything extraordinary. It was just, those type of sports. It's like, it's hard to justify letting your kids play a sport like that, even if you could manage and remove the threats towards soul, when part of the reason of doing it is for, like, the strengthening um, and um, and better health of the body, and it's something that's so destructive to that body. It's a hard pill to sort of swallow in doing that. Yes, we can do things, and yes, we know that sometimes. I mean, I'm the biggest advocate for letting boys be boys, and, like, hey, you're gonna dump off your bike, you're gonna fall down out of a tree, you're gonna get in fights with your brother. Like I'm the biggest advocate of just sort of like, whatever, like, rub some dirt on it, kid. So,
Exactly.
yeah, like, I think boys need to be tough. Like, I don't think they should be wrapped in cotton cloth and things like that. But I think there's a difference between letting kids rough themselves up in a normal way, just of life, versus putting them, through repetitive car crashes without a car. Like,
Well,
there's
and there's studies now, right, Father, with the CTE. I mean, the brain damage that comes from football
yeah,
is pretty well studied now, and it exists, and it is terrifying. And that's just and it's not with all of them, but it's with many. And I mean, and if you've seen some of these ex NFL players, I've seen, say, John Elway, one of the greats.
yeah,
And I've seen him in person, and the guy struggles to walk. I mean, he
hmm
can walk, it's fine. He can use his two legs, but you can see he's in pain. I mean, he is in
yeah,
pain with every step, and I think that's something that comes from his career. And he was a quarterback, so you imagine these other guys. And I got hurt too playing football. I still feel it. I mean, I still feel it now, and I didn't
yeah,
play that much, and my body still hurts. So I can't imagine these guys who play it professionally and who get hit every day as hard as being hit by a truck. And I think that's another thing, Father, that I think you got to say too. And I can speak for myself here, that you have these athletes in high school or eighth grade or whatever. Like, hey, I'm a great athlete. I'm fast. I'm strong. I'm big. You're almost surely not fast enough, strong enough, big enough to actually make money from sports.
yeah,
Almost surely. I mean, like, you think you're really good, you're almost surely not good enough. And that was definitely in my case, that I was actually very fast. That was the one thing I had. I had a very good 40 time, etc. And I really thought I could, come on, mom and dad, let me do this. But my parents didn't let us play. I played the 1 year of baseball, or I played another summer of baseball. I played 1 year of baseball, but they just said, hey, they want you to play every Sunday.
Yeah.
And they're just like, hey, we can't do it. And there were times in my young adulthood where I did kind of, I don't want to say resent, but I was kind of like, you guys didn't let me have a chance at the big time. I was like, oh, eventually when I got to be about 30, I was like, oh, Kevin, shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not reality.
No, I mean, like, so, like, I think better than many, I sort of know actually what it is, what is required to sort of make it to that degree, because I was a very good baseball player. I was, well, just as an example, like, I played when I was a semi-pro team that I played for. Of the starting 9 of us, I think 4 from the starting 9 were drafted.
Wow.
And I was the cleanup hitter on that team. And
that's the best position. Everyone who doesn't follow baseball, that's the guy who can really hits cleanup.
So, like, it's, I made the conscious choice not to play in college, because at that time I was changing, I was converting, I was getting involved very much with a nonprofit organization that me and my friends had started that was involved with the church and everything, and that was becoming my main focus. And I realized I can't do both at the same time. It is impossible. And I sort of had like the "you're a white kid from a northern state" talk with myself, and it was like, okay, well, let's try to take care of eternity. That's probably more important to focus on. But but it was something that was hard to do, because I actually, very few kids sit there and realize like they've had a dream that ever since they walk, and then when they had it in their hand to realize, like, they choose to let it go. And that was, like, I mean, everybody dreams of playing in the major leagues, but from like a realistic dream, like, I always dreamt of playing college baseball, and and I didn't because of by choice, not by circumstance. But just to put it in perspective, I had a lot of natural gifts towards that end, and I worked my keister off. Like, when I wasn't playing baseball, me and my friends were going to the park to play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And when we weren't playing actual baseball, then we were playing wiffle ball. And when we weren't, and when it was the winter time, we were working out in the batting cages. And I got jobs in working at the batting cages, giving lessons and helping clean and run the machines and the tills and everything like that. So I could just be around it more and more, and it's an unhealthy obsession. It's something I'm convinced that it is near impossible for somebody to become a professional athlete and be a good and fulfill their Catholic duties at the same time. So you can't. I mean, it's near impossible to become a professional athlete. Period. When you think about it,
Yep.
what there's 1,500 baseball players in the major leagues, probably, as just a round number guess. I would something like that, maybe a little less. And there's how many millions of kids that play baseball throughout the world? It's
Many.
it's
Yeah.
So it's a near statistical possibility anyways. But even if you had some aspect of ability to be able to get to that point, the amount of work that you would still have to do is incongruous with the Catholic life. So and it's all to play a kid's game, and then that's the other part. Like, we set up a society that worships these people. We pay them millions upon millions of dollars. We put their pictures everywhere, and that's the other part to it. That is the religion of the world, and people need to understand that. there's nothing wrong with playing sports, like I said, around with your friends. There's also nothing wrong with watching a sport. That um, to go to see a baseball game, or to go sit and watch a college football game on TV or something like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with watching a little bit of sports, as long as it's within something that's reasonable. Like, don't remember that anything with electronics and television and stuff like that, it starts getting into that easily addictive, time wasting type of scenario. But moreover, it's um, uh, but in and of itself, it's okay to watch a little bit of sports as a recreation. Um, I would say that to be careful with some of these sporting venues, because you're going to definitely run into, especially in the summertime with like things like baseball, you're going to run into people dressed immodestly all over the place, and then there's going to be, at the very least, bad music that's played throughout the stadium. Um, and then depending on where you are, like the Cincinnati Reds here in Cincinnati, they're usually a lot more family friendly, so to speak. I mean, like I said, it's far from perfect, but there's not too much really egregious bad things on it. But there are other places that are just absolutely terrible. Just absolutely, you'd be shameful to bring your kids to some of them.
We went to a game. It was a minor league game in Omaha. So it was I think the AAA team for Kansas City. This was back when I was in high school, and we went with Father Gronenthal. So a Seamerite. He was a deacon, I think, at the time, and his dad was bringing a couple of the boys to see a baseball game. Because you think, hey, the boys are in boarding school. They're really trying to treat us to a really nice day.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, we found out, I think after maybe 2 innings, that between every inning, they were having a cheerleading contest.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so we literally had to father after two innings. So this was, what's 2 innings? I don't know, 20 minutes, something like that. We had to get up and leave. So
Yeah.
tickets paid for, and I mean, it was totally terrible and shameful, and everyone's
Yeah.
disappointed. But it's like, you can't stay out there for that. And even I was in high school at the time. I was like, hey, this is insane.
Yeah.
This is crazy. You have a bunch of practically half naked women out there dancing on the ball field, and it's like, what? Just play the sport, for goodness sake. But you're right; it's everywhere. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's like, and I feel bad for father in that situation, because
For
he
sure.
probably think, I'm doing something great for the kids, and he shows up, and like, he must have been absolutely
Oh,
mortified
for
that
sure.
like, because once you've, like, oh, like, what's he gonna do, like hold his arm out over everybody's eyes and be
Yeah,
like, ah,
you
like,
can't.
don't look,
No,
kids,
guys, gotta
it's,
go. Yep.
so it's like, it's just, yeah, it's just, so it's really being careful with those things. Like, I think you would find it hard to justify going to a football game, period, because they all have cheerleaders in it, and um, which is also sort of a good segue into the idea of um, it's not the same for playing sports, even amongst men versus women playing sports. I think that's an important thing to point out. You know, we're traditional Catholics. We do not live in this fake world of faux equality about all things that, and care about Title IX or anything like that. It's I mean, that's it's arguments about things that, about things that are all just should be forbidden anyways. Now again, are girls allowed to play athletics, things like that? Like, can they go outside and play soccer in their yard and have friends to do the same, whatever? Sure, absolutely. Like, a recreational thing around the house is is certainly allowable, but even greater care must be taken to one, preserve modesty in all of these things. That, name me like, that pretty much precludes participation in any organized sports, period, because name me one organized sport that girls play that they would actually dress modestly in.
Shooting. Shooting. It's shooting with firearms. It's the one thing they actually have that here in Germany. They have skiing and shooting, father. So that's what I tell my daughters. Like, okay, you want to do biathlon? I think I'm okay with that because I think modesty should be all right.
Well, I mean, I guess you'd sort of leave aside that it would look a little funny skiing in a skirt, but that's
fair. Okay, true.
And besides like the ski outfits that they use now for athletes,
True.
is a wetsuit.
True. That's a good point. That's true.
So,
You're right. You're not safe anywhere. Fair.
So it's yes, I guess you could, if you were just doing shooting. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily counts as. Yeah, is it an Olympic sport? Yes. I don't know that it necessarily counts as athletics.
Yeah.
So
True.
it's
You're not gonna lose too much weight doing shooting. So that's gonna get your blood pumping too much. Yeah.
I think that's more. It's like I'm not gonna make the. I mean, like darts used to be on ESPN, but I'm not going to make the argument that the competitive darts is the same as athletics. So it's hard to define sport, but yeah, I think it would be it's about it really that you could sort of even kind of come around to. You could do archery, you could do shooting, those type of things. Sure. But generally speaking, it would be immodest dress, and not just immodest dress, but immodest dress in a way that is now paraded out in front of a crowd of people, and oftentimes then coupled with placing yourself in precarious physical positions, which are even more immodest. Furthers that train of thought. And both Pius XI and Pius XII both talked about that in their addresses on sports and modesty and things like that. That should be rejected wholeheartedly when that becomes apparent. And so because a lot of girls' sports are just that. It's gymnastics, or it's figure skating, or it's whatever. Like those are, and then even the ones that aren't, it's like there's still plenty of opportunity for it, and they're just dressed inappropriately. It also fosters a breakdown in the division of the sexes. The loss of femininity. It's to start trying to be a competitive athlete and things. It's a very masculine quality.
Competitive women's sports is a very new thing.
Yes,
that is maybe 100 years old. That is not an ancient thing that women used to do back in the 1500s. They were not going out and playing soccer.
No, of course not. And I would even gander to say that really playing in any kind of way competitively on any large scale is probably only post-World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might have had small pockets of certain competitiveness, but anything that was sort of just largely acceptable would have been post-World War II time. So like we're talking true modernity in that reality, and it just so happens to coincide with the times of pushing women's liberation, pushing for degradation in dress standards, pushing for all things of modernism, the changes, the sexual revolution, all of those things, they all come in this very, compact time frame of existence. It's not coincidental, and it also that true competitive nature. It's that's not meant to be. That's not a feminine quality. It's a forced sort of reality, and it's a crossing over and embracing what is masculine. And there's nobody that sits there and thinks, oh gee, like when when I think it's really attractive when a girl comes down after spiking a volleyball and goes ah, like
True.
nobody thinks that, oh, that is feminine right there. That is, somebody might appreciate the talent that's involved in it, but nobody equates that with female. Um, it's just it's not, and so I think it's really like you you can't treat men playing sports in the same vein as women playing sports. It really, uh, women's sports really should be much more, far more, even more so intramural and away from um, the eyes of others watching and things like that. That it should be relegated to just the girls kind of on their own, having fun and some, a little bit of recreation and things like that, without much concern towards real um, competitiveness. Now, I mean, there can be some overlap, right? Like you can do certain sports where you can have, like you can play badminton as a family. You know what I mean? Like that's not that much of a risk. Like I'm not trying to be, completely, you know, too far that one way. But when you talk about starting to get into like real competitive aspects of sports, I don't see how you can really justify that in the way of for females out there. And so, yeah, I think that's an important division. But and that's one of the things to understand. Like this overemphasis in the importance of sports, this turning it into a religion, this challenging of what the designations from God Himself and the way He orchestrated and designed the nature of man and woman and where virtue is and everything like that. The It's not accidental that these things become that sense, and they didn't used to be that way. But it's I mean, Senator McCarthy pointed it out that it was part of what was part of the design of communists in subverting a society was inducing overemphasis and trivialities like sports that became an extremely important thing in the eyes of society because um, because it it ends up replacing what the true highest ends are. You've eliminated the true purpose. You've eliminated the true high end, which is God, and you've substituted with a lesser thing, achievement and accomplishment of yourself. Success for a team, glory upon a field. You have your cathedrals and your stadiums. You have your saints and their iconography upon the walls. You have you have um, you have the ceremony and the ritual, and you have the sacrifice all there. It has all the aspects of a faux religion, because that's what modern idea of sport is supposed to do, is to replace religion and to subvert man based on appealing to his base nature, his passions, and utilizing those, um, rather than having him rise up in the way of virtue. I mean, it was astounding. I remember when I first came here, um, and started doing boys camp and things like that, and we'd like have teams and pick teams and play games and all the sports games and everything like that at camp. I remember just sort of like shaking my head, or the kids would play like wiffle ball or kickball and stuff like that at the recess time here at school and things like that. I was shaking my head and sort of like laughing to myself, because seeing them operate and realizing, like, if a kid wasn't good at sports in those games, the other kids would try to help him out, and they would try to like teach him how to do something, or they would encourage him and they clap him on even if they were on the other team and everything. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I never experienced that in the
Mm.
entirety of my life,
Wow.
because
Yeah.
if that, like, that kid just wouldn't have been picked for a team, and if he was picked for a team, everybody on the team would have gone, oh no, like, oh, like, we got Johnny on our team, he's terrible, and they would have made fun of him. They would have made him hate sports more. They would have never have taught him anything, and then and they would have mocked him when he failed, and like. And I was just like, wow, what a difference when you have virtuous kids treating sports in the right way for the right ends, in the right realm of like appropriate application to life. It takes on like a totally different picture. And yeah, St. Gertrude's isn't going to you know, win the award for best athletic team of the year. For because we don't even have an athletic team. We do. Our school does fencing, so there's something. The boys do fencing. That's about it. So, and it's just against other small Christian schools and things like that. So, but it's. But we don't have sports teams, and I don't think we ever would, even if we had got bigger and everything, because it's just the modern idea of sports has just become so dis um, just so incongruous with what we're trying to promote for traditional Catholicism and the way of life. And so in the end, I mean, it is fine to play sports as a recreation and have fun with them. It is fine to have them in their rightful place. You should be healthy. You should take care of your bodies. You should do these things, and it's fine to watch sports as long as you're preserving those areas of decency and it's not disproportionate or something like that. But we really need to keep it in its proper box and not let it come out further, and not let the world influence us in these ways, because it very, very, because they play to the base passions, they very, very quickly become corrupted if we allow them to get a small foothold, and by comparison.
Well, this podcast brought to you by DraftKings.com. Make all of your sports bets. I couldn't resist, Father. No, Father. I really appreciate it, and I think it's a good message that it is, right. It really, in the end, it's moderation in terms of how we, take things in, but also it's a really good point about children and sports, and I think it's something that parents out there need to really consider, and I'd say really, really consider. Listen to what Father has said. It's not a small thing, and I'd say I know there are people out there rolling their eyes and like Father's just being too strict and stuff. It's like I'm telling you, Father's quoted from Pius XII, Pius XI. I've also read several of these. It's not messing around. This isn't. We can't just be like, oh well, there's no Pope now, so we're gonna we're just
No.
going to kind of do what we do. That's not how it works. We got to take this seriously. And I think that's the spirit of the law. We need to really take that seriously. What is the spirit? What is modest? What is appropriate? What is the appropriate way? And as you said, Father, it's not just modesty. It's also pride. It's also commitment. It's also obsession. And I think it's a great point that people really need to actually consider and talk to your priest about it. I'd say that too. If you have questions about it, bring it to your priest. Bring it. Maybe Father will answer your questions as well, because
For sure. Yeah. You've always offered
important.
to if people have questions, they can write into you, and then you can
Exactly.
send them over to me or whatever, or and honestly, I think about it. It was recently that somebody asked me. It was another gentleman that is a parishioner that at one of the missions had said to me. He had asked about a mutual person that we knew, who was his friend and was a parishioner at one of the other mass locations, and he said, "Oh, does this person's sons do they play baseball or anything like that, or have they gotten involved in sports?" And I said, no, they don't. And this person was a relatively a new convert, and he said, "Huh? Oh, that person was such big into sports. I'm surprised that he doesn't have his own sons sort of like follow a little bit in his footsteps and play." And I said he really strives for having his sons have a good Catholic life. And so their sports are, they play with their friends. They do, like, they go to the Knights of the Sacred Heart. They do different things of games and recreations like that. But they have all of what they need from sports, from 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 church though. Like they they serve mass, regularly, not just on Sundays, but they serve other times, and they participate in different events at the church, and they take time to volunteer to do work at the church, and they all these different things. So they have all of that they need in the way of social interaction. They have all that they need in the way of fun activities. They have all in the way that they need of exercise and recreation, without having to get involved with something that could corrupt their souls in any way, shape, or form. So the ends of sports are fulfilled without even having to dabble into that. And I said that, he as a father knows, because he did play so well in sports, he knows the dangers that he would want to put his own kids into. Um, I think that perhaps is one of the most telling things for the listeners is, I think, those of us who take our faith seriously and have played, have ourselves been involved in athletics at a much at a high level, are going to be the um, most rejecting of the idea of putting our own kids into sports that we went through, because when you know the picture as a whole more perfectly, then you know the dangers more intimately. And so, like, for me, if I were a parent, there's no way I would put my kids in organized sports at all. And that's the best sort of um, way to indicate it, I think, that I could.
No, I appreciate it, Father. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Succinct. We kept it under an hour, which is good. Hopefully, my wife will be pleased with us. That's might be a new record. 57 minutes is pretty good, Father. As
Hey,
always, I greatly appreciate it. Everyone, thank you very much for sticking with us and for listening. Again, it's one of those topics that's going to be hard for some people to listen to. I get it. I know Father understands that as well. But it's important, and it's important that you take it seriously, and that you hear what Father has to say, because again, Father's experienced it from both sides. He was an athlete and now he is a priest. If you want to reach Father, please email me, Kevin89Davis@gmail.com. Again, Kevin89Davis@gmail.com, and I will forward any appropriate emails to Father. You can ask me if you have any questions as well, and I will definitely do my best to answer them. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff, and share with people who might be wondering, who have young children, who are wondering, oh, should I put my kids in sports or not? Send this to them so that it will at least get them thinking about the right ways, and again, the advice of a good priest who has been there and done that. Father McKenna, as always, thank you very much, and until next time, God bless you.